First off, I would say I would encourage any owners or searchers or whoever it might be to look at the SBA's website, right? Because, like you said, some of these really talented banks you might not know from billboards on the side of the road or anything like that, but they are so prevalent in the space and good at what they do. The SBA's website has things like volume closed per bank, type of deal closed per bank. Closing rate, success rate, all of those different things. So you can get on there and you can find some pretty cool data points that will lead you in the right direction. There are also other companies out there. Lumos Data is one of them. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they publish this publicly available information from the SBA's website, but they put it in nice little graphics to say, oh, okay, here are the banks that are really crushing it in the acquisition space, or here are the banks that are really crushing it in the real estate space. At the end of the day, like all lenders aren't created equal. And I think they would admit that too. Certain lenders go really, really deep into acquisitions. That's their bread and butter. That's what they do. It's almost the same conversation we just had about the doctor and attorneys, right? Some banks are just known for it. So I recommend that those owners, those searchers, they do that type of research. They find the right fit for them, and then they go in and they figure out who to go with. It's not shopping around. I definitely don't, advise shopping around all the time, at least in not that sense. But it's understanding that there are differences and that there are options out there.
Yeah, and when I say shopping around, probably should clarify that. What I mean is, just because it's an SBA bank, a top SBA bank, it doesn't mean that they want to lend in the space that you're in. They might have a
Yeah.
certain buy box or sell box, however you want to phrase that, that they do. And so you do need to kind of understand that. So you can go look at the volume, but you also need to understand, okay, hey, do you work in, oil and gas, for instance, not exploration, but other parts of oil and gas. Some
Yeah.
don't. Do you work in Texas? Some do, some don't. So you kind of got to understand that as well. That they may not specialize in your industry and want to avoid that for whatever reason. And a lot of times it seems that owners or even buyers will talk to a bank and they will say, "Oh, I can't do this. It's not SBA approved," realizing it's not bank approved. That bank just doesn't want to deal with this type of deal. It's too small, too big, whatever it might be. Has nothing to do with SBA. And so, if you're an owner, you're going, "Okay, well, that sounds really complicated. How do I figure out? I can go to these sites, but you know." I go through this process of talking to a few people. Okay, this bank, X bank is the best bank for me and my business, my size. Now that I've kind of got an evaluation, I like this price that the SBA is going to give me. What are the things that I'm going to do that's going to frustrate the bank that might end the deal that I need to go ahead and fix now? And how long does it take to fix them?
hmm I think the biggest red flag would be lying on an application. If you're a borrower, at least, inflating numbers, getting something over to the bank or to the buyer, and having those numbers look different than what they actually are. Because at the end of the day, if you end up talking to whatever bank it is, and you end up getting a commitment letter as a borrower, that kicks off due diligence. That kicks off all of the requirements under the SBA program, which normally that's going to include a business valuation. That's going to include tax transcripts. That's going to include really getting not invasive necessarily, but getting pretty deep into the specifics of this business that is being purchased. So it's going to be uncovered, right? And if that's the false information that I mentioned as a red flag, yeah, that's bad. But it could also be as simple as undisclosed liens, undisclosed federal tax liens, UCC liens, issues with commercial real estate if it's a part of the transaction, trusts, parties involved that weren't disclosed. All of those types of things. The sooner that we know about them, the better, because if there are issues, you can usually resolve issues if they're disclosed with adequate time, right? If they come up later, that is just going to be a really negative situation. And I think this somewhat ties into something I wanted to mention earlier too, when you asked about lawyers who represent banks and are they good, are they bad for the buyer and seller. The right lawyer is a big net value add. Obviously, I'm biased, so don't take don't take my word for it, right? But to me, a good banking attorney can make or break a deal, not because they're going to get something right or wrong, but for instance, if I've been doing SBA for whatever years, if something comes across the table and it is an issue, like what we just mentioned, I'm able to talk with the bank and say, okay, here's an issue. It doesn't mean that the deal is dead, but let's talk about solutions, right? How can we creatively go about this and make it so that it is compliant? Not cutting corners, but figure out how to get to the closing table. That's very different than an attorney who gets something and sees an issue and says, okay, not SBA eligible. This deal's dead. I'm sorry. And I know there are attorneys like that out there, but that's not what we're supposed to be doing. We flag issues, but you find the solutions.